Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Well, today it's really nice here today. It was really overcast, really nice weather. It's like in the 70s this morning. But today, right now, it's probably up in the 80s. So it's a really beautiful, nice day. Great weather here. And today, this video, I'm going to make it about Todd and Julie Chrisley, why they went to prison. A lot of people can't wrap their head around it. They can't get an understanding of how these people that were, didn't commit a horrible, violent crime, didn't do really horrible things to other people. They are Christian, they have a nice lifestyle, nice show. Why did they end up in prison? How did they get to prison? Well, they're not above the laws, how that happened. And Todd and Julie Chrisley, if you don't know who they were the beloved reality couple from the show Chrisley Knows Best. And I'm going to try to do this in simple terms, not be using a lot of legal stuff, some of it, but more in simple terms so people can kind of understand. Just so many people are just outraged and just don't get that, these people could be put in jail. But, well, I didn't really watch the show. I've seen a couple of shows before this all happened. They kind of caught my eye, kind of my ear. But I think I was watching other shows opposite them or something. So I just kind of, every once in a while, I'd watch a snippet of something. But I didn't really watch the show a whole lot. So I can't say I was really a fan, but I was intrigued by them. And they had an interesting show. And Todd and Julie were independently wealthy before they even got on this show. They had a real estate foreclosure business. They were in some type of real estate business. And they became wealthy from that. Not directly from the show. The show did add to their wealth, and they did get a lot of, they became richer from the show. And the charges that they got were like, I wrote down a lot of the numbers and a lot of the amounts, like the dates and amounts, because I did a video on this before, and I don't remember all of it. I did find out a few other little things, but they were accused of tax evasion, conspiracy, breaking conspiracy laws, and defrauding banks. And actually, Julie got 2 other charges for obstruction of justice and wire fraud. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But when they filed bankruptcy, they filed it 2 years before they actually got on the show. So they had already filed bankruptcy. Kind of keep that in mind. And this has been like a 10 or more than 10 years, like this 20, about 11 or 12 years maybe going on. If you count the bankruptcy, maybe like 13 years or something. It's been, a long saga. And they filed for bankruptcy in 2012, I think. It was Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is a type of bankruptcy where you liquidate anything that you have, assets or anything that you bought from the monies that you used. Or a trustee is appointed, and they will determine, what you sell and to pay back part of the loan or the debt or whatever it is, how you came about the money or whatever. I don't know what they actually had to pay back. You would have to get the trustee papers. You would actually have to have the court papers, which I didn't file for that. I didn't get that much into it, but it would actually have a list of things that they sold, how much they sold it for, and how much went into the debt to pay this debt or that debt, So there's a whole process to bankruptcy. And they inventory everything. They determine, this is for Chapter 7. There's different types of bankruptcies that you can file. There's reorganization, especially if you own a business. You can do different things to try to save your business, and it allows you to pay back certain things, and then, you get to keep, the majority interest in your business or something like this. But this is for filing for just a personal bankruptcy that you just want to get out of the debt. It kind of erases your debt and lets you start over. And it usually stays on your record for about 10 years. And I know this because I filed for bankruptcy when I was very young. I was about 22 or 3 or 4. I don't remember. I was very young. And I had land and a home, and I got behind in, I had some issues with my job, and I ended up not being able to make the payments. I worked in the day where you could get in a woman's face and call her names and do everything, physically harass a woman, and there was nobody really to report it to. So I was in a horrible situation with my job, and there was not a lot of HR departments then, and it was really a struggle, and it was a horrible thing I went through. And I would never suggest doing it, never. If you can find any way out of it, try to repay your payments, do something, or even if you don't file bankruptcy and you don't make the payments, go back later on and start making payments, or try to redo something. Try to avoid bankruptcy is all I can say, because it stays on your record. It is so hard to get a loan, so hard to get car loans, so hard to get it. It really costs you a lot when you do this. So I would avoid it if at all possible. Okay, and when they filed bankruptcy, they were accused of hiding, I think, monies or assets or something of that sort. And that kind of goes back to Julie's counts, I think, because the IRS, if you try to reroute things, put money into different accounts or something, try to find a loophole, you have to be very knowledgeable about it, and you have to be very understanding what you do. So allegedly there was something that she did with wire fraud, and that caused the obstruction of justice and wire fraud charges. And they were outed by a former employee of Todd's real estate foreclosure business, Mark Braddock. He worked with Todd, and this is the guy that allegedly accused Todd of having an affair with him for about a year. And I don't know if this is the catalyst for him outing Todd, because he went to the FBI 2 times. The first time they didn't take him serious, and they just kind of ignored it. And then the second time, he did it a second time, trying to get them in trouble, and he was able to get attention on it, and they made a case, and he actually got immunity for his testimony. And that's unusual, because when you are claiming that you participated in things that are of an illegal nature, and you want to report somebody else, you have to have clean hands. It's actually, a terminology in the law to have clean hands. But he was given immunity. He worked out a deal where he got immunity. He did not have to serve prison time for that. And they were also accused of not paying their taxes for years between 2013 and 2016. So that's 13, 14, 15, that's 4 years. They were accused of not paying federal taxes. And there was also a bit of controversy over, I think it was around $6 million that they did not declare as income that came from the show, from income from Chrisley Knows Best show, the proceeds from their show. And I think if Julie had tried to reroute that, or if allegedly whatever was done with that money, not specifically just her, but she did get the charges for the obstruction of justice and wire fraud, which, if you don't know how to do that, it's very complicated to try to move money around and put it into different assets and do things like that, because the IRS is really slick. They have their own records, they have records from the company you get paid for. So it's really hard. It actually is really hard to do something like that and get away with it. They can check records, and they have, they can pull out hard copy records and show them in court, you know. So it is kind of hard to do something like that. And their accountant, Peter Tarantino, he actually was charged with doing some fancy footwork or something with their taxes. So he got 3 years. He was also indicted with them and got, well, in a separate case. He had his own case. So their accountant got in trouble. The former employee, had he not worked out a deal for immunity, he would have went to jail too. Todd and Julie actually went to jail. And they did have a case against them for not paying state taxes also. There's the federal tax charges, and then there's the state tax charges. The state charges, they actually were cleared of that. The Georgia Department of Revenue cleared them of those charges. I think they owed around $2 million here, and I'm not sure if that's the right number, but there was several different, I did find different amounts for that. But in 2019, the charges were, or they got charges in 2019 for the years between 2008 and 2016 that they did not pay state taxes. But they ended up overpaying, actually. They figured out they actually overpaid, and they got a $66,000 refund. So they got those charges knocked off. And if you, I don't have to pay state taxes, thank goodness. I live in Texas, so we don't pay state taxes. Anything that we buy, we pay a tax at the time that we buy it, which I like that better. Because if I'm not buying, I don't know what the rates are in other states are for state taxes. So at the end of the year, I don't have to file anything like that. So I don't have to keep up with that, which is to me a better thing. I'd rather just, if I go and buy something, that I pay my taxes right then and there. So to me, I like it. I think that's more convenient. I like it a lot better. And so they got those charges knocked off. But Todd got 12 years. Julie got about, I think, 6 or 7 years. She'll be out in 2013. So she got 2030, sorry. She'll be out in 2030. So she got about 7 years. And Todd, he won't be out till 2035. And the reason he got more time, people don't understand. I've heard a lot about, well, why didn't they get the same if they, they're married and, they both got charged. Why did he get more and why did he get so much? Well, he was convicted of actually, being the mastermind. When you're the mastermind of a crime, you get the most amount of time. Because if you weren't the person who had the plan and put together, the crime might not have ever happened. So that's the way the law sees it. Being the mastermind of something, if you get accused of that, that just adds on to it. That makes it worse for you. That makes you're going to end up with the most time of all. And they did get house arrest until they were, between the time that they were convicted and they were sentenced, they did get on house arrest, which they were very lucky for that. They were able to stay out and get their affairs together and, say their goodbyes to their kids and stuff like that. And they're very fortunate that they did get to do that, because a lot of defendants, they get, remanded into custody right then and there. And so they were very lucky for that. And, I think a lot of it was out of greed, and when you're living in a 30,000 square foot mansion, you get kind of sucked into that lifestyle. He talked about all the money that they used for buying clothes, kind of bragged about it and, showing all the things, that's the lifestyle that they led. And, there was one other thing that when they found out that they were going to be charged, Julie went to the bank. This I find to be very, a little disturbing, that she took her mother-in-law, she took her name off the accounts and put her mother-in-law's name on the accounts. And I just can't see somebody doing that. Immediately the day after they found this out, they went and did this. And that doesn't give their mother-in-law, Nanny Faye, the mother-in-law, Todd's mother, that really didn't give her enough time. That's a huge business decision, and to just spring that on that person. And I think a lot of manipulation went into that. I think that was calculated, and I think that they told her, you're old, you won't get in trouble, or this is the best thing, or I don't know what the conversation was, but something had to be said to her to make her do that, because I cannot imagine doing that to an elderly parent, or to manipulate somebody in that way, to possibly put them in harm's way of charges, adding them on. Her name wasn't even into it until they put her onto that account. She was totally out of, all this stuff until they did that. And I just, to me, I didn't like that at all. That was, even though, and a lot of people saying, well, she's a grown woman, she should be responsible for what she does, and, she knew what she was doing. Well, parents will do all kinds of things for their kids. I actually had a person in my father-in-law did the same thing for one of his kids, in a way, in a sense. He really didn't do a crime, but he mortgaged his house in a reverse mortgage and gave all the money to the eldest son, because the eldest son wanted to pay off, I don't know, him and his wife had these big SUVs, and they wanted to pay that off to get rid of the interest, and then they wanted to pay off part of their house and other loans. They wanted to consolidate all these loans, but they didn't have the credit to do it, because they were over-ended on their credit, and they amazingly didn't commit fraud or anything like that, but they did go and they talked this elderly man into putting a reverse mortgage on his house, and then taking all the money and using it for their good. And when I found out about this, I was like, that's horrible. I said, that puts him at so much liability. He could lose his house. And what if something catastrophic happened to this person? What if he was an elderly man? Maybe he could have had a stroke or heart attack, or he could have other health complications. He did have some health issues. And I said, what if something worse happens? He might need that money, I mean, that's why you put your money into assets, in case you need it, and not to pay off excess for somebody else. Let them work. They were young enough to work it off, and they were going to be in debt. And but I found that to be very manipulative. And then he started to understand. Somebody explained it to him in the way that I said it. I didn't talk to this person, but they explained it to him, and he got a little upset with the son. And he was like, "Yeah, what if I need that money? And I also said, what if he needs to move in with somebody? What if he needs care? What if he needs something? I don't want him living with us." Yeah, I wasn't going to take care of him. But then that started another argument about his independence. He wouldn't be able to do what he wanted. He would have to move states away to live with this person to be taken care of. The son was like, well, I'll take care of him. I'll and that's not exactly what he wanted. He wanted his own freedom in his own house. And I said, well, you signed it away when you signed those papers. And I kind of feel like that's what it sounded like. She was signing away her possible freedom and putting herself into a lot of debt with lawyers, or who knows what, when she signed those papers. And I think it was done under the duress that that's my son. I'm doing something to help them out and to do, So I think that's the conversation they had with her. I don't think she just clearly understood, the depth of this. And the judge did make some consideration, from what I read, not to charge her because of her age. And she does have kidney cancer, some other factors. So she could have actually been a defendant in the case. And to put her in that position, I thought was completely wrong. I just didn't like that at all. And because they were like cutting and pasting different amounts into, like, scrapbooking the records and putting different amounts than what were originally there in order to get these loans. They over-exaggerated their income. And you can't do that when you go to get a loan, especially if you file for bankruptcy, because it'll get found out because you have to have all these records, and it has to match up with your debtors or the banks or whoever you borrowed it from, and where did the money come from. They want to know where the money came from, because if you owe all this money, they want to know where it came from. They want to know that it's legal and legitimate. And that's another way they can find out, is if you're falsifying records. And so don't over exaggerate your income. Even if you're applying for a credit card, anything, just whatever you make, just be truthful. It's not worth the consequence if something, if you end up having to do something like this. And like I say, it's like poor judgment. You get consumed by that lifestyle, and you want to live a standard that's higher than what you can afford. And that's what ended up happening to them. I think the greed and the addiction to that lifestyle, I think it led to this. They had to have more money to cover other loans, and they were just, making a revolving door out of this process to stay on that level, to stay on that lifestyle. And I know these people are beloved, and people are like, well, they shouldn't go to jail, but you have to think about, should rich people be allowed to have lighter sentences just because they give money to charities or they do good deeds? If some of them haven't ever been convicted, they really haven't, caused problems, they don't have legal issues. I do think that sometimes your character can help you get a lighter sentence, and I can understand that. If you're a career criminal and you're defrauding people one after the other, you got case after case, then yeah, you should get a harsh sentence because you keep doing it over. You haven't learned your lesson. I do think that sometimes maybe people, not because they're rich, but I think sometimes if you do strive to live a clean life, you show remorse, and you understand what you did was wrong, that you won't do it again. That I think that can factor in. I think there's some leeway for that, because do good deeds lead to a get out of free jail card or spending less time? That's a moral. What's the moral implication of a society that works like that? That processes their criminals or their judicial system, if it works that way. And that's kind of the way it is now in a way, but it's not set in stone. We don't have exact sentences. You can be sentenced up to 30 years, or you can get, between at least 5 years minimum up to this amount of years if you commit a crime. And a lot of things are taken into consideration by the judge. When you are accused of a crime and somebody has to go to trial, a lot of things get brought up, about your character, the nature of the way you are. Some people are allowed to have character witnesses. And so our judicial system, it's not exactly fair, but there is some leeway, and they could have gotten a much higher sentence. I do think that I know a lot of people probably not agree with this, but I do believe that they should have went to jail because they did commit, fraud. They weren't remorseful. They didn't seem to understand that they broke the law. And they had witnesses against them. They had records against them. Like I say, if you're going to do something like this, the IRS will have records. They will match it up. If you borrow money from the bank and you change numbers, they're going to have the original paperwork, or they're going to be able to see, oh, you didn't make that much money, or you didn't pay taxes on it, or you this or that. There's a lot of ways that they can catch you doing things. So, it would be best just to, live in your lifestyle, live in the amount that you can afford. Don't get caught up in excess. Don't. I know it's so. I would have my own addiction. I think of maybe buying. I do like big trucks. If I won the lottery, I would probably have a few lifted trucks and a Jeep, and I do like cars and trucks, and Also, I might buy some expensive clothes and things like that, but I would try to stay in my lifestyle, you know, and don't think I would. I mean, they had millions of dollars and they wanted more and more and more and more. And they went and got all these loans and they falsified records in order to get the loans. And they did it from several different community banks because it would be easier. And that also showed a pattern to the judge, you know, in the way that they did it. And like I was talking about, something that if you have done it repeatedly, I had an argument with somebody that one of their uncles got arrested for his 5th DWI, and they were going to send him to prison. He had never served prison time. He always got out on probation, and he was upset. He was like, that's the stupidest thing. He didn't kill anybody. You know, why are they sending him to prison? I said, because he could have killed a lot of people, and he still hasn't learned his lesson. This man is like in his 60s or something, you know. And I think it was upsetting, you know, because he was elderly, but, you know, he was old enough to know better. And he already got in trouble for it 5 other times. And the numerous other times that he drove drunk without getting caught, you know, and he never learned his lesson. So I think sometimes, yeah, if you're going to continue to do things like that, I think you should get a harsher sentence. If you haven't learned your lesson, then yeah, you should go to jail for a longer time. But hopefully, if Julie and Todd get out, they stay on a straight and narrow path. Don't do anything else like this ever again. You know, I think they'll have a future. I'm sure that they'll have another show after they get out, you know, My Time in Prison or something. I don't know. You know, Chrisley knows best in prison or something. I don't know what. I mean, I'm sure they'll parlay it into something else, and they'll make money, and their kids are going to be making another, I don't remember what it was, some other show. So this hasn't completely derailed their life, but they have, you know, they have paid the price. So if people can kind of understand that, like when Todd filed for bankruptcy, he said he only had $55 left in his checking account and $100 in cash. And that's after having like $30 million. Borrowing 30, going around and getting all this money. That's what he declared in the bankruptcy. That he only had $55 in his checking account, $100 in cash. So a lot of people, maybe they don't realize, and this is when he was a millionaire. This is, you know, he had been a very wealthy person, you know, getting all these loans, and then when it came time to pay the piper, you know, he had nothing left. That's what he declared. Okay, I hope that maybe that helps people understand a little bit better, and to maybe even, I know a lot of people are just so upset because they're, you know, decent people. You know, I think they are decent people. And I have said some things, you know, about Todd and taking care of his wife when she had cancer and all this. You know, I don't see them as being bad, horrible people. They made a horrible mistake, stupid thing to do. And they got arrogant. They got, you know, putting their nose in the air, you know, and not, I really think it was a lot to do with greed and being in that lifestyle. And they just got caught up in it, and they had to completely keep, you know, running on that hamster wheel to catch up and catch up and catch up. And I think that can be a huge strain and a stress when you're living in that kind of lifestyle, and you've got, you know, 30,000 square foot mansions to pay for, and you want to buy nice clothes and nice cars and stuff like that. You know, it catches up with you. It does. Always live in your budget, always live in your means, and try to stay out of trouble. Okay, thank y'all. Y'all have a good night.